Imagine August 480 BC, a cliff face on one side, the sea on the other. Between them, a strip of ground so narrow that any army is forced into a single column. Down that strip, an army on a scale never seen before in the ancient world. Hundreds of thousands, chariots, cavalry, an empire from Egypt to India. Facing it, 300 men combing their hair. For 3 days that army was held. Wave after wave. The line did not move. When Persia finally broke through, it was not because the Greeks were beaten. The blow came from a direction Leonidas never anticipated. To understand Thermopylae, understand what was coming. Xerxes inherited this war from Darius, whose army was shattered at Marathon in 490 BC. Outnumbered, the Athenians pushed forward and drove the Persians back. Darius rebuilt. He died before the rematch. Xerxes absorbed the army and the mission. 4 years of preparation. Between 120,000 and 300,000 soldiers. Over 1,200 warships. To cross from Asia into Europe, Xerxes locked ships side by side into a walkable causeway. When storms destroyed the first attempt, he ordered the water lashed. He built replacements. Most of Greece submitted, offering earth and water. 2 cities refused, Athens and Sparta. This is the account of what those 2 cities, and the 300 men sent north from one of them, achieved at the hot gates. And why, when the pass fell? The war was already changing. First understand Sparta. While Athens built democracy and art, Sparta devoted its entire civilization to soldiers who would not stop. The Argogs, weak infants, were left on a hillside. At 7, boys entered a decade of conditioning, kept hungry, expected to steal, punished only if caught. Courage was the highest value, cowardice the deepest disgrace. A Spartan who retreated was shunned by everyone. That dread was often more powerful than the dread of dying. Spartan women were educated, athletic, direct. A mother's instruction: return carrying your shield, or return lying on it. This was the forge that produced Leonidas and his 300. A Spartan warrior carried the hoplon, a large bronze-faced shield, and the dory, an 8-foot thrusting spear. Bronze cuirass, leg guards, and the Corinthian helmet that sealed the face except 2 slots. Short sword, the xiphos. In the phalanx, soldiers locked shoulder to shoulder, shields interlocking, spears staggered. Fatigued men replaced from the rear without the line breaking. Relentless. Mechanical. In a corridor that could not be flanked. Nearly impossible to stop. Leonidas was around 60. Third of 4 sons, he came to the throne through loss. The Spartan council authorized him to march despite the Carnea festival. He was given 300 men, his royal bodyguard. His criterion: men who had already fathered sons. He was not assembling a holding force. He was choosing men for a specific ending. The oracle at Delphi: either Sparta falls, or a Spartan king does. Marching north, allies joined: Thespians, Thebans, Phocians, Corinthians. The force exceeded 7,000. They repaired the crumbling Phocian wall. Leonidas knew of the Anapia Trail, a mountain track that bypassed the pass. He placed 1,000 Phocians on the heights. Then they waited. Xerxes waited 4 days. A cavalry observer reported the defenders were exercising, combing their long hair. Xerxes summoned Demaratus, an exiled Spartan king. When a Spartan dresses his hair, he's about to stake his life. Xerxes laughed, sent an offer: surrender, keep your lives. 2 words back from Leonidas: Molon Lab, come and take them. On the 5th day, Xerxes sent the Medes and Scythians, 10,000 soldiers. Persian archers opened first. A volley said to darken the sky. Spartan named DNX heard someone say the arrows would blot out the sun. Good, he said. Then we will fight in the shade. Shields went up. Arrows broke against bronze. The infantry followed. They hit a wall. Imagine being in that first Persian wave. You enter the pass. A locked formation of bronze directly ahead. Shields interlocked, sealing the corridor. Spears in layered rows. You push, they hold. Fresh men step up as exhausted ones pull back. You're running into a mechanism calibrated for exactly this ground. Xerxes reportedly rose from his seat 3 times. Not from excitement. From what he was seeing, Xerxes sent the Immortals, 10,000 of Persia's best. Their name, when one fell, another replaced him. Unkillable by design. They entered the pass. The Greeks introduced a false retreat. The phalanx appeared to fracture and run, pulling the Persians forward, then pivoted and cut them apart. The Immortals fell back. 2 full days. The greatest army ever assembled drove itself against a few hundred meters of bronze. The position did not break. On the second night, a man entered the Persian camp. Ephialtes of Trachis. He was Greek. He knew his way around. He knew the terrain above the pass. He brought Xerxes the Anapeia trail, emerging behind the Greek line. His reason: money. The Greeks later made his name a word: Ephialtes, the thing that descends on you in the dark. Still does. Xerxes sent the Immortals up the trail that night. At dawn, the 1,000 Phocians heard the column. Not voices, the compression of fallen leaves, Persian arrows. The Phocians pulled back. The Immortals moved past. They were not interested in the Phocians. Runners reached Leonidas. The Persians were behind him. Leonidas called his commanders. Most allies were ordered out while withdrawal was still possible. More than 4,000 left. The 300 Spartans stayed. Law and the oracle required it. 700 Thespians, under Demophilus, refused to leave. Thespia would burn regardless. They chose a death history would record over one it would not. About 1,500 men total. 2 Persian forces closing. Leonidas told them to eat a proper meal. Tonight they would dine somewhere else. At dawn, Leonidas advanced. Not to hold, to kill. They moved toward the empire. Herodotus records 2 of Xerxes' brothers dying in that assault. Leonidas fell, brought down by archers. The Greeks pushed back 4 separate times to recover his body. When spears broke, the short blades. When those were gone, whatever was left. The Immortals arrived from the heights. Theban soldiers surrendered. The Spartans and Thespians still standing were compressed onto a small rise. Xerxes ordered his archers to cover it. When nothing moved, it was over. Thermopylae was a Persian victory. The route south was clear. Xerxes marched. Athens burned. Measured by territory, a defeat. And yet, something changed in that pass. Not the time purchased. The delay was days, not weeks. What changed was what was demonstrated. Persia can be hurt. The Immortals had been driven back by men who had already chosen their outcome. Every Greek soldier watched a few hundred hold for 3 days and choose to stay when leaving was possible. Thermopylae did not save Greece. It gave a civilization the evidence it needed to believe Greece could be saved. 6 weeks later, at Salamis, the Greek fleet destroyed the Persian navy. The following year at Plataea, a united Greek army ended the Persian land campaign. Xerxes had Leonidas's body decapitated and displayed, a violation of the accepted rules of war. The Greeks placed a stone lion at the pass. Simonides wrote the words, "Go, tell the Spartans, stranger passing by, that here, obedient to their laws, we lie." 25 centuries later, this still moves. Leonidas chose men who had fathered sons. He held the line until the line was gone. Then he moved what remained directly into what would kill them. Not because they won. They did not win. Because some defeats are so completely, so deliberately chosen, that history cannot look away.